Hi everybody, Matt and Paul here, and today we're talking about inheritance tax for UK expats now living or planning to relocate to Gibraltar. So I know what people are thinking straight away, Paul. They're thinking, what are these guys talking about? There's no inheritance tax in Gibraltar. There's no planning needed, which is great, but you are still liable to UK inheritance tax, and that's what the planning has got to take into account. So there were some changes to inheritance tax rules in the UK last year. Paul, do you want to just kind of outline those very briefly? What changed?
No, essentially, I think the autumn budget of 2024, I think effective April 25, or some of the changes come into effect, what, April 27?
I think it was April 25, and then the pensions is April 27.
April 27, exactly. I mean, essentially, the difference is that we've shifted from a domicile-based IHT regime, whereby even if you left the UK and if you had some ties, then you were deemed UK domicile, and it was very difficult to shed your domicile, which meant that you were forever caught under the UK IHT net, and it wasn't very clear cut. So you were exposed to UK IHT, but there were assets that could effectively be out of scope from UK IHT. But then the Labour government moved to a residency-based regime, and now, as you know, Matt, even if you leave the UK and come to Gibraltar and become tax resident here, it'll take you 10 complete tax years before you are outside the UK IHT net. So that means that essentially you should really consider how you mitigate a potential UK IHT liability on your estate during those 10 years where you are, as opposed to the domicile-based regime, which was a bit more grey. This is one is so clear-cut that you really ought to mitigate that liability through insurance.
Yeah, absolutely. So the changes mean greater clarity in my mind.
Yeah.
But it's kind of extended the timeline really, because the domicile, there was this kind of loose 6-year. Now we know it's 10 years, and it doesn't just stop at that 10 years, does it, Paul? So 10 years, you're in the UK net, so to speak, for UK IHT on your worldwide assets. So they treat you effectively like you're still in the UK. After those 10 years, you become what they call a long-term resident, but UK IHT still applies on UK assets. So you've left the UK, you now live in Gibraltar, you've been in Gibraltar 12 years, you think, great, I'm outside of the UK, but you're still taxed on UK cited assets. So that's UK property, UK pensions, UK bank accounts, UK investment accounts. So there's an element of kind of planning involved in that as well. And I've had this kind of conversation with people as well, Paul, in the sense that, okay, they think, well, I've got 10 years to sort things out because I'm in the net. But of course, you know, there's potential change in legislation in that time. We've seen the tax changes quite a lot that have come in the last 2 years. I think the UK government will probably have a bit of concern about people leaving the UK because there's been this kind of drain almost of people coming to places like Gibraltar, Dubai, Monaco. So I think my recommendation, and tell me if you agree with this, Paul, is all places where possible, if you are exiting the UK and you're exiting the UK for good, bring your assets with you, at least take them out of the UK. Would you agree with that?
Well, completely. I mean, it would be madness to retain UK citrus assets knowing that they're captured by UK IHT. It is your opportunity to divest from the UK, and since you plan to establish your fiscal residency in Gibraltar, you might as well bring with you your financial assets and restructure them in a tax efficient way. And yes, you're still caught for the first 10 years. Fair enough. but you can mitigate that using a whole of life, or more importantly, a 10-year life, 10-year term insurance, and you establish what the potential liability is, and you protect against that. But yeah, you should really consider divesting. You mentioned a lot of assets. We haven't covered ISAs. I know that ISAs might be a small proportion, but we know that clients have also built portfolios of buy-to-lets, and you should really take a holistic view of your, net worth. Look at the different assets you hold and where you hold them, and what you can do to reduce that exposure. That is important. And since we're talking about estate planning, the other thing that UK nationals often do, they move to another country, but they want to retain their main residence. And that has implications for the UK statutory residency test, and, and ties and so on, unless, of course, you're renting a main residence. But the other thing people often overlook is that you're granted main residence. Is it called main residence relief?
Private resident release, a PRR, yes.
PRI, there's an acronym. I know that.
There's always an acronym, yeah.
There's always an acronym. So there's private residence relief, and which I think once you've exited the UK, they give you a period of grace. I think it's another 9 months, even as a non-resident, where you can claim the full relief. So if it's your main residence, effectively you can dispose of the assets free of UK capital gains tax. Why wouldn't you do it if you have no plans of returning? I know that psychologically it's almost like a comfort blanket. You want to think, but if I don't like it, I've got my main residence. Okay, that's one view to take. The other one is I have to be pragmatic. If I return, I don't know where I'm going. I might as well sell and start again if I return. But I maximize the relief that is available to me and dispose of my main residence. I mean, if you are logical thinking, that would be the right course of action. If you're emotional and that's your main resident, lived there for 50 years, I've got good memories, then maybe it's more of a struggle to dispose of that asset. But really, being logical and pragmatic, you should really dispose of all assets, including the main residence, and certainly the main residence within that period, either before you leave or within that 9 months thereafter, where you gain full capital gains tax relief.
Absolutely. And I guess that's part of our role, isn't it, Paul? Kind of taking that emotion out of the planning. And talking about this, it's interesting because I don't think we can talk about inheritance tax planning without all the other elements of planning. And we both kind of tripped into that because that's the whole point. It's meant to be an overall kind of holistic planning. And we've recently recorded a video about structuring your kind of wealth planning in Gibraltar, so people should stay on to kind of watch that one. But IHT plays a very important part in this, and I'm not sure about you, Paul, but I think it's probably that one area that people kind of tend to overlook. I mean, as Brits, sometimes we don't want to talk about inheritance tax planning because it's almost kind of linked into our death, and we don't want to have that conversation. But you have this opportunity to pass on more of your money to your beneficiary. I mean, we mentioned in the office the other day, IHT at 40%. It's a large amount. It's brutal on money that you've already paid tax on. So UK expats moving to Gibraltar, you have this opportunity. Why wouldn't you take advantage of that and plan properly?
I fully agree with what you just said, but it's more important than that. You know that UK IHT is largely avoidable if you structure your investments correctly. So you're given the opportunity to mitigate or avoid. The question is whether you understand that those options are available and take full advantage. But why move to a third country for lifestyle and for tax and then not exploit those loopholes? And they're not even loopholes. They are plain vanilla products which acceptable to the UK government and HMRC, and it just allows you to be to protect those assets you've built over a lifetime. And you know, and if there weren't any products, you still have insurance as an option to cover that potential liability. But yes, it's surprising that people seem to forget about that. And if you look at the stats and the data, Matt, the amount of inheritance tax collection by the UK government is growing at a phenomenal rate. That tells us two things: either the rules have made it better for HMRC to gather more tax revenue, or people have become more complacent. I think it's probably a combination of both.
I think absolutely. And they've obviously frozen the IHT allowance for many more years. Come April 2027, your UK pensions will now be included in UK IHT. So that pushes up your size of your estate. And you're right what you said, Paul. I think it's quite common, but it's been described as a voluntary tax is IHT. And it's a bit, I guess, tongue in cheek, but it's true. It is, you've got a choice. Do you plan or don't you plan? And then, you know, if your estate is paying a huge IHT bill, okay, we can have a go at the government for taking that, but also we have to kind of look inward and see what we did. But the beauty is Gibraltar offers this great opportunity in many areas, and IHT planning is one of those.
Matt, I would say as a closing comment is that I think the reason people don't protect against UK IHT is because it's a morbid subject.
Correct.
So it's not emotionally, it's an emotionally charged subject, and no one wants to talk about their eventual demise.
Yeah.
So bring the subject out in conversation. Even planning for that, it's not something, because it's almost like conceding that, you know, nature will always win. And as a human being, you're reluctant to think about that. But look, wealthy individuals do that, and they protect their wealth, and it's open to everyone. You know, whether you're an ultra high net worth or just a high net worth, or, you know, or a wealthy retiree, yeah, it should be one of the top things to discuss when you move to Gibraltar.
Absolutely. Perfect. So for those interested in this, please watch our next video where we talk about overall wealth structure in Gibraltar. I know everyone watching will like that. As always, please subscribe, like, comment on our videos, share them with your friends as well. And we will be back with another video very shortly. Thank you.